then it's time to shift it, okay?
Amber, believing something can happen even if it is impossible or it doesn't seem to be. Like when it appears that a couple cannot conceive or have a healthy labor, delivery, and baby. When it's scientifically and medically not possible and God miraculously heals someone, makes them whole, and allows something to happen that can't logically happen. I love that. But what about the times when he doesn't do it? That's when it's harder, right? Notice that we often say, and I totally 100% believe in miracles, but what happens when the miracles don't come? That's when faith is harder. Because once the miracles happen, then we have evidence. And we're choosing to see it, right? 100%. We have our reticular activating system. We have our confirmation bias that is saying, look, here's proof in something that I believe, right? We have our beliefs. Let's write it out like I always do, right? We have our beliefs, so let's say we have our belief in God. Okay, right here. And then our reticular activating system goes on to find evidence of it. So we find proof. We find proof in how we feel. I find it in how I feel when I listen to worship music. I find it in certain places, in churches, in temples, when I'm praying at certain times. Not all the time. My prayers are not always spectacular. Sometimes when I'm in a worship service, and most of the time my brain is elsewhere, okay? Sometimes I find proof in different places. I find proof and evidence of my belief in God because that's what I told my brain to look for. But when we are not consciously choosing faith, when we are not consciously having faith, and we aren't looking for that evidence, then we have doubt, right? And again, we'll talk about this tomorrow. And then our brain, again, goes and looks for proof. Our confirmation bias, our reticular activating system goes to work looking for proof of what we believe. And our belief is just a thought that we choose to keep thinking. What if God's not here? Why didn't he answer my prayer? What if he doesn't actually exist? All of those are the thoughts that we continue to choose to think, then we find evidence of it. Now, when we have evidence that addresses this and confirms it, it feels great. In those moments when science is astounded and there is no medical explanation and the person heals and walks on water and all the things, then we can choose to make that evidence that God exists, or we can choose not to, because there is that option, right? Tons of people saw Jesus do miracles and they didn't think that Jesus was Jesus, right? They didn't think he was the Christ. But we did, right? I do. I read that story and I choose to see it as evidence of his divinity. Okay, still a choice. Okay, this is how two people can experience the exact same thing and have completely different reactions and responses and results because they still have choice. This is agency, ladies. This is one of the most beautiful things and astounding things that I recognized when I found life coaching and I applied it to my faith is I became aware of agency on a new level that I had never heard of it before. Because I had always been taught that my actions were my choice, but I had never been taught that my thoughts were. I had never been taught that my faith was a choice. And we're going to go into the myths about it in just a minute, right? Does this make sense? But what do we do when we don't have the proof? What do we do when we have proof of the opposite? That's when we still get to choose, but it's a little bit harder. Because now we have evidence to the contrary, and our human brain, our primitive brain says, yeah, well, what about this evidence? What about the person that didn't get healed? What about the prayer that I didn't answer? What about the solution that I didn't get to my problem, even though I was doing all the right things? That's when it's harder, but it's still a choice. Okay? Danielle, my history of choosing to trust my own self, and it keeps me thinking that I'm in control and not having to let go of control. Yes, 100%. One of the reasons that we don't want to let go and let God, right? That's a phrase that I have been thinking of a lot recently is let go and let God. One of the reasons we don't like to do that is because it feels really good to try and control it ourselves. It's very scary to give it to somebody else, even if we know that that person that we're giving it to is God. And yes, we logically know that he has all power and can do all the things and make it better than we do. And yes, we believe that and we know it. And yet we still feel afraid. That's when all of these tools that you're learning come so in handy because then we can just process the fear. recognize the thought that's creating it, notice that it's a lie and it's a false sense of control, and then we can give it to God. And that's the actual how of doing it that I was looking for my whole life.